My name is Lila Carter, and I grew up in a home filled with warmth, cinnamon, and love until the day my mother's memory began to unravel like a thread pulled loose. My brother and I did everything to protect her, but when our estranged aunt returned, claiming she knew what was best, she tried to take our mother away and sell the only home we had ever known. That's when we learned that sometimes love isn't gentle. Sometimes love has to fight. Where are you watching from? Comment your location, and don't forget to subscribe for more emotional stories. Our house sat near the edge of a quiet town in Vermont, its red brick walls softened by decades of changing seasons, smoke curling every morning from the chimney the way memory curls into the corners of a home. Inside, everything smelled of cinnamon and pine wood, and every corner held laughter, warmth, life. On one early spring morning, my mother, Emma Carter, hummed softly as she stood in the kitchen, her hands dusted with flour as she rolled dough for her cinnamon muffins. The radio played an old song about rivers changing, but continuing anyway, and sunlight spilled through the lace curtains like someone had parted the sky just for us. Upstairs, I sat cross-legged on the carpet arranging my dolls in a small tea circle. Their names were Evelyn, Mary, and June, each wearing a dress I had sewn myself from scraps of my mother's fabric. I brushed their tiny yarn hair gently as I hummed along to my mother's tune, taking great care with each one. To me, they weren't toys. They were my companions, my stories, my small world made safe. My younger brother, Noah Carter, was 1 year younger and full of restless energy, as though the wind had chosen him as its vessel. He never walked when he could run, never whispered when he could shout, never held still when something in him needed to move. The hallway trembled under his hurried footsteps right before he burst through my bedroom door, catching his foot on the rug and falling forward. In that single stumbling moment, his body knocked into my neatly arranged tea party, scattering the dolls across the floor. June's tiny porcelain hand snapped clean off as she hit the wood. I gasped, not in anger, not in rage, but in the kind of heartbreak only a child understands, when something beloved is harmed and the world tilts because of it. They're just dolls, Noah muttered, confusion pulling at his smile when he saw my expression. They were having tea, I whispered, gathering them up with shaking hands, trying to hold pieces together that were already broken. That was when our mother appeared in the doorway, not with anger, but with calm certainty. Emma never needed to raise her voice. Her presence carried enough truth. She looked at Noah with eyes that held patience and disappointment together. "What did we talk about yesterday?" she asked gently. Noah's shoulders sagged. "About not running in the house," he murmured, "and about respecting other people's things," she added softly, "especially your sister's." He whispered, "I didn't mean to. Intentions matter less than actions," she replied, brushing his hair back with the same hand that once rocked him to sleep. "Go clean up the toys you left downstairs. All of them. Before dinner." He nodded, but when he left, his steps were slow and reluctant. An hour later, his soldiers lay sprawled under the kitchen table, marbles rolled across the floor, and his wooden race car rested abandoned beneath the armchair. Instead of cleaning, he was outside chasing his bright red kite across the yard, laughter rising like wind from the ground. My mother watched him through the porch window. She said nothing. She didn't call him back. She didn't repeat herself. She simply watched him with a soft, thoughtful sadness in her eyes. The next morning, Noah's shelves were empty. Every toy he owned, gone. He tore through the house, checking under couches, in closets, beneath the porch, his panic growing like a storm. "Mom," he shouted, "my toys are gone." My mother sipped her coffee. "Maybe they left," she said calmly. "Left," he echoed, breathless. "Toys have hearts too. Sometimes when things are not cared for, they go where they will be," she said, voice steady, not stern. "Toys don't walk," he insisted. "No," she agreed. but sometimes love moves in their place. His lower lip trembled. He bolted out the back door and ran to the neighboring yard where Mr. Lawson, our elderly neighbor with kind eyes and hands stained with oil and soil, was repairing a fence. Noah's voice cracked. "Mr. Lawson, have you seen my toys?" Mr. Lawson paused, wiping his brow, and nodded slowly. "Saw some toy soldiers marching toward my shed this morning," he said they were leaving because someone forgot how to care for them. Noah's face broke open with regret, with realization, with something that would follow him for the rest of his life. "I do care," he said, voice wobbling. "I'll never forget again. I promise." Mr. Lawson gave him a long, knowing look before nodding toward the shed. Noah ran inside. On a workbench sat a cardboard box filled with every toy, cleaned, arranged, cared for. He pressed the box to his chest and whispered, "I'm sorry, not to toys, but to the lesson." My mother stood on the porch watching him, her eyes warm, proud, and just a little sad. She knew lessons like this shape children into adults, and once learned, they never unlearn. None of us knew then that this memory would return to us years later, sharper, heavier than anything a toy lesson could have prepared us for. Because love is easy when everyone remembers how. The real test is what happens when memory begins to fade. Years passed, and the seasons continued their slow rotation around our home, but the memory of the toy lesson remained with Noah like a thread woven into his character. He grew into someone who held things carefully, not just objects, but people, moments, promises. I watched him learn how to slow his steps, how to listen before acting, how to soften his hands and his voice. He became gentle in the way our mother always hoped he would. And I, too, grew, still quiet, still observant, carrying my mother's songs tucked behind my ribs, letting them settle wherever silence threatened to turn heavy. Our childhood moved forward like that, softly, steadily, under a roof stitched together by love and the ordinary magic of routine. But time touches everything, even what feels untouched by the world. Our father, Mark Carter, had died when we were very young, long before either of us could form memories of him. Mother rarely spoke of him, except in small, fond stories that lived at the edges of conversation. A laugh he once had, a joke he loved, the way he held her hand when they walked. Those stories were enough for us. We never questioned his absence. Mother filled the house with enough love for 3 people, though I understand now that her love was stretched thin, stretched delicately, stretched to breaking. By the time Noah turned 16 and I was 17, our mother had begun to slow, not in a way anyone would notice at first, not in her posture, not in her step, but in her certainty. Sometimes she would forget where she placed her keys, though she had used the same bowl by the door for years. Sometimes she would pause in the middle of telling a story, her eyes clouding as though the rest of the memory had floated away like steam. Sometimes she called us by our childhood nicknames, even when we were nearly grown. Small things, ordinary things, things that could be explained away by tiredness or distraction or the soft erosion of time. But the forgetting did not stay small. It grew quietly at first, like frost forming on a window, almost delicate, almost beautiful, until one day the cold beneath it was too heavy to ignore. I came home from school one afternoon to find my mother standing by the stove, a pot left burning. The room filled with the sharp, bitter scent of something long overcooked. The smoke alarm had already been removed and placed neatly on the counter beside her. She smiled when she saw me, too brightly, her face too still. "Oh," she said, blinking. "I must have been thinking about something else." I opened the windows, let the cold air rush in, let the smoke trail out in long ribbons. I told myself it was nothing, that she was tired, that we were all tired. But then came the day she forgot that our father was gone. She was sitting at the table, stirring a cup of tea, her fingers tracing circles around the rim. The chair across from her was pulled out, as though she expected someone to sit there. She looked up when I entered, her expression soft, dreamy, distant. "Your father will be home soon," she said. I froze. The house seemed to still with me. "Mom," I began carefully, "Dad is—" But before I could finish, Noah entered the kitchen, and his eyes met mine. A silent decision passed between us. Not now. Not like this. Not when her face looked so hopeful, so peaceful, so full of something that felt like life. So we sat, one at each side, and the cup of tea across from her went untouched, steam fading into nothing. From that day on, the house was no longer simply a home. It became a place suspended between memory and forgetting. Some days she was fully herself, laughing with us, kneading bread with flour, dusting her hair, humming her old songs. Other days, she wandered through rooms as if looking for something she had already lost. She set the table for three again. She spoke to empty chairs. She waited for footsteps that would never come. Noah and I learned how to step quietly, how to guide conversations, how to remind without correcting and comfort without explaining. We learned to carry grief while pretending not to feel it. The neighbors began to notice. Our mother would wave to them with the same warm smile she always had, but sometimes she introduced herself as if they had not lived next door for 20 years. Mrs. Bell from down the road started leaving casseroles on our porch. Mr. Lawson, older now, slower now, came by to check on the garden and the roof and the heating. He never said much. He had always known how to speak with presence instead of words. But time does not pause out of kindness. Noah finished high school and stayed in town, working at the small mechanic shop just off the highway, wanting to be close, needing to be close. I left for college 2 hours away, convinced, against the small, trembling voice inside me, that life still had room to expand outward. I came home every weekend. I called every night. But distance is distance, no matter how small. Each time I returned, the house felt a little more fragile. One afternoon, I came home to find our mother standing at the porch, wearing her old coat in the June sun, waiting. She turned to me with relief blooming on her face. "There you are," she said. "I thought you were lost." I was just gone for school. I whispered, hugging her far too tightly. But she didn't remember that. She didn't remember the house. She didn't remember the day. She didn't remember I had grown. Her eyes searched mine as though I was a familiar song played in a new key, recognized yet different, loved yet unfamiliar. My chest ached with a kind of pain I did not know how to hold. And still, she smiled. Love was still there. Memory was not. The forgetting was not gentle anymore. It was taking her, taking us. And we had no idea how much more it was coming to take. The year the forgetting took full shape was the year the winters seemed longer. Snow clung to the windows like frostbitten lace, and the house creaked as though it too was tired. I had finished college by then and moved back home because leaving no longer felt like living. It felt like abandoning something already slipping through my fingers. Noah visited every morning before work and every evening after, his hands always smelling of engine grease, his clothes dusted with sawdust or oil, his eyes tired but still holding that same warmth from childhood. We had become two planets orbiting the fading sun of our mother's presence, trying to keep our world from collapsing. But memory loss does not move slowly. It accelerates like something falling downhill, gathering weight and speed until you cannot stop it. Some days she didn't know what room she was in. Some days she called Noah by my father's name, her voice lighting up with a joy so painful we learned how to smile, while breaking. Some days she wandered outside, convinced she was late to pick us up from school, even though we were standing right there in front of her. And then came the day she walked into town alone. It was early morning when Noah called me. His voice was tight, too steady, which meant he was trying not to panic. "She's not here," he said. "I checked the yard, the road, the attic, everywhere. She's gone." The world blinked. The walls around me dissolved. I didn't answer. I just ran. I don't remember the drive into town, only the blur of snowflakes smearing across the windshield and the taste of fear in my mouth. We found her sitting on a bench outside the old bakery, her hands folded neatly in her lap, a small smile on her face, as if she'd been waiting for someone she loved. When she saw us, she laughed softly, as though we were children again. "There you are," she said. "I thought I lost you." We cried later, quietly, where she couldn't see. It was then that the doctor's words stopped being something we discussed and became something we lived. She could not be alone anymore. We needed help, and help came in the form of my father's side of the family. My father's sister, Aunt Marjorie, swept into our lives like winter wind, cold, sharp, and unwelcome. She had always lived in Boston, wrapped in her own world of charity galas, crisp suits, and opinions sharpened into weapons. She appeared one Sunday morning without warning, stepping into the house with a tight-lipped smile as though she owned the place. "Poor Emma," she sighed, smoothing her coat, her eyes scanning the house as if assessing its worth. I knew this would happen eventually. She hadn't visited once in 12 years. Noah stiffened when he saw her. I could almost see the memory flickering behind his eyes. The first and last time we met her, standing stiff and distant at our father's funeral, her eulogy filled with empty praise, while our mother wept quietly beside the casket. Marjorie sat beside our mother, taking her hand with the kind of gentleness that was only convincing if you didn't look at her eyes. "You should have called me sooner," she said to us. "Family is supposed to help family." The words would have meant something if she had ever acted like family. Our mother smiled at her with vague recognition. "You look familiar," she said. "I'm your sister-in-law, dear," Marjorie replied. "Charles's sister." Our mother's face brightened, as though someone had opened a door to sunlight. "Oh, Charles," she breathed. Yes, he'll be home soon." Marjorie's eyes flicked to us, sharp, almost triumphant. "You've let her believe he's still alive," she whispered harshly. Noah clenched his jaw. "We didn't let her believe anything," he said. "Her mind chose what made sense to her." Marjorie clicked her tongue. "Well, this can't continue. She needs professional care, proper supervision, structure. You children can't handle this." I knew what she was really saying. You can't be trusted with her. You're not enough. But I also knew something else. Marjorie didn't come here out of concern. She came because the house had value. The land had value. The old orchard behind the barn that we had stopped tending when Mother's memory became more fragile, it too had value. She didn't see a family. She saw an estate. Over the next weeks, she inserted herself into decisions that were not hers to make. She called doctors. She scheduled evaluations. She requested assessments. She spoke over us, around us, and sometimes directly through us as though we were invisible. The town saw her as responsible, caring, noble, because she used the right words in the right tone, because she looked the part. But she was not here at midnight when our mother wandered the hallway calling our father's name. She was not here when we found her in the backyard in the cold, barefoot, searching for something that no longer existed. She was not here when Noah held our mother while she cried and cried without knowing why. But appearances are power, and Marjorie knew how to wield it. One afternoon, I walked into the living room to find her sorting through my mother's sewing basket, the one with the faded floral fabric, frayed slightly at the edges, full of thread wound like memory. "We need to start clearing things," she said. "She won't need most of this where she's going." I felt something inside me go very, very still. "Where she's going?" I asked. "To a care facility," she said simply, as though the decision had already been made. "No," I said. She stays here. This is her home." Marjorie laughed softly, but there was no warmth in it. "You're emotional, Lila, not practical. The property is too much for you and your brother. You'll ruin yourselves trying to maintain it. Better to sell now while it's still worth something." There it was. The truth. Not concern. Not responsibility. Not care. Money. Legacy. Control. I looked at my mother, sitting in her rocking chair by the window, humming to someone who wasn't there. Her eyes were soft, unfocused, somewhere far away. The house around her held every memory she had left. If she left here, she would lose what little remained of herself. No one was going to take her from me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I simply said, "Over my dead body." Marjorie smiled slowly, like someone who has already won. "Then I'll see you in court." And that was the moment the lesson from childhood rose inside me, clear as day. Toys leave when they are not loved. But this time, something else would leave. And it would not be us. It would be her. The words hung between us like a blade, sharp enough to draw blood without even touching skin. Marjorie gathered her purse, adjusted her coat, and walked to the door as though she had delivered something inevitable, something ordained. I listened to her footsteps fade down the porch steps. Then I turned and leaned against the wall, feeling the house itself hold its breath beside me. Noah came in from the yard, wiping his hands on his jeans, his eyes searching my face for answers before I even spoke. "She wants to put Mom in a facility," I said, "and she wants to sell the house." It took only seconds for Noah's expression to shift, from confusion to disbelief to a quiet, burning anger that simmered behind his ribs. He didn't shout. He didn't pace. He simply sat down at the kitchen table, elbows on his knees, head bowed. I knew that pose. It was the same way he had looked the day our grandmother died. A grief that hadn't happened yet, but already felt. We both knew something unspoken. Putting our mother in a facility would be the same as losing her entirely. She wasn't just forgetting people. She was forgetting places, touches, rooms. If she woke up somewhere unfamiliar, surrounded by white walls and strangers' voices, the fading map of her mind would lose its last landmarks. The house wasn't just where she lived. It was how she remembered being alive. The sound of the floor creaking in the hallway, the smell of cinnamon baked into the wood, the wind through the old maple, the rocking chair by the window where she had sung to us. If she lost these, she would lose herself. The next day, Marjorie returned, not with conversation, not with compromise, but with paperwork, a petition for guardianship, a request to take legal responsibility for our mother, to gain control of her finances, and with that, control of the house. She stood on our porch like someone delivering an invitation to a dinner she already expected us to attend. I didn't open the screen door. I read the papers through the mesh while Noah stood behind me, arms crossed. Marjorie's voice was syrup smooth as she said, "I'm doing what's best. You and Noah are overwhelmed. You're children. You don't know how to handle this. But I do." There are moments in life when something inside you changes so quietly you almost don't notice. But afterward, nothing is the same. I watched Noah's jaw tighten. He took one slow breath. Then he stepped away, not defeated, preparing. We did not argue. We did not plead. We did not explain. Because we both knew people like Marjorie do not listen to voices. They listen to power. And we did not have power yet, but we had something else. We had memory, not the fading kind our mother carried, the kind that stays sharp, unbroken, patient. We spent the next weeks gathering everything she couldn't see, medical papers, evaluations, doctor's notes, written statements from neighbors who had seen us care for her daily, records of every grocery run, every medication refill, every heating bill we covered, every late-night call, every crisis handled. Noah spoke to Mr. Lawson, who quietly confessed something none of us had known. My mother had confided in him years ago, her wish, if anything ever happened to her mind, to stay in her home, to stay with us, to never be placed in a facility no matter how bad it got. He had it in writing, a signed letter, dated, witnessed. I didn't know what to say when he handed it to me. The edges of the paper were worn, like it had been read and held many times. There was something unbearably intimate about it, as if my mother had spoken across time, across memory loss, across the quiet unraveling of her mind to place her hand in ours. And then, one night, while searching through old boxes in the attic, I found something else, a leather-bound journal. My father's handwriting inside it, letters to my mother written during the earliest years of their marriage. Gentle, hopeful, full of a love that had once been alive. But there was something more. A final entry, dated only weeks before his death, where he wrote that if he could no longer be present to protect his family, he wanted his sister, Marjorie, to stay away, that she had always seen their family home as property, that her love was currency, not care, that Emma and the children should never be her responsibility. A signature, a voice from before memory fractured, a father I never knew speaking for us when we needed him most. The court hearing came in early spring, on a morning where the world felt too quiet. The same judge who had officiated Marjorie's petition sat at the bench, his glasses low on his nose, his expression unreadable. Marjorie spoke first, her voice smooth and sorrowful, describing herself as the responsible one, the caregiver, the savior. She spoke about our mother's condition in clinical terms, stripping her of warmth, reducing her to symptoms instead of a person. She described us as overwhelmed, emotional, children acting from fear, not logic. And then they asked us to speak. Noah didn't say much. He didn't need to. He simply looked at our mother, sitting between us, hands folded neatly in her lap, her eyes distant but still soft. And he said, "I know her." His voice didn't shake. "I know what scares her, what comforts her, what her hands do when she's about to cry. I know how to guide her back when she gets lost. My aunt does not know these things. She knows paperwork. I know my mother." Then it was my turn. I didn't speak about memory loss. I spoke about love. I told the court about cinnamon muffins and songs about rivers and dolls with tiny dresses and toy soldiers that walked away to teach a child how to care. I told them that home is not walls. It is identity. And if we moved her, we were not saving her. We were erasing her. Then I placed the two documents on the table, my mother's written wish, my father's handwritten warning. The room shifted. Marjorie's face tightened. Her voice sharpened. Her certainty cracked. The judge read in silence for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was light with finality. Guardianship remains with the children. The mother stays in her home. Marjorie broke then, not loudly, not dramatically, but in a way that revealed something hollow inside her. She left without looking back. We returned home together, just the three of us. In the months that followed, our mother's memory continued to fade, slow in some places, sudden in others. But she was never afraid, never confused by her surroundings. The house carried her when her mind could not. Noah built her a garden bench beneath the maple tree. I read to her in the evenings, my voice soft, steady, repeating stories I knew she used to know. Some nights she would hum, softly, the river song, the one she sang while baking when we were children. And though she no longer remembered all the words, I remembered. And that, in the end, was enough.